Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Scott Newhouse. So glad that you are with me. Today, we're going to go through the top 6 investment mistakes that retirees make. I cannot believe it, but I have been a financial advisor for 10 years now. Started my own business in 2019, and that's Forthright Finances. So I have probably met with definitely over 200 retirees. Not necessarily worked with all of them, and obviously I've worked at different companies. So worked with a really good, diverse number of people, and I've got a good idea of kind of the things that retirees mess up on a little bit. One caveat before we get into the list, which is, in terms of financial advising, you're typically going to meet with people who have done, better than most financially, right? And that just makes sense. If you've got a little bit more money, saved up more investments, you're going to be more prone to reach out to a financial advisor. Whereas someone, struggling, doesn't have too much going on in the way of investment accounts or savings accounts, they're just not going to reach out as much. So that's the big bias in terms of the sample size that we have here. But with that ado, let's jump into it. So number one mistake that I see retirees make is being too conservative with their bonds and their cash. There is a popular and I think very foolish rule of thumb that says you should have your age in bonds. So you start with the number 100 and then you take your age, and let's say 65 is the typical retiree age. So you'd have 65% of your money in bonds, and then the remaining 35% would be in stocks. I really don't like that rule of thumb. And obviously, rule of thumbs don't apply to every single person, and we know that because personal finance is personal. But if you've got 65% of your money in bonds, think about what those bonds are doing over the long term. They're getting maybe 3 to 4 to 5% returns. But what are you doing to your portfolio in retirement? Well, one, there's going to be inflation, and you're not doing that, but that's just a fact of life. There's going to be inflation. Historically, it's been around 3%. The last 5 years, it's definitely been higher than that. But then you're also going to be doing distributions, and maybe you take out 3%, maybe you follow the 4% rule. I've talked in the past that if you know what you're doing and you watch it, maybe you can start out at 5%. Not a recommendation. You've got to know what you're doing before you get into that. But if you're going to have 3% inflation plus 4% distributions, the bonds probably aren't going to be able to outpace that. And that's where you need more stocks in your portfolio, because you want to make sure that you have enough money in your late 70s, 80s, and 90s. And so if you have too much in bonds, too early and too long in retirement, those inflation plus distributions, it might knock your portfolio down much too quickly and might put you in a really tough spot in your 80s and 90s if we're lucky enough to get there, and I hope we are. So I have seen a lot of folks come in way too heavy on bonds, and that would probably be my number one top mistake. But actually, this isn't in any order. So let's go on to the second mistake that I see retirees make, and that's over-concentration in the S&P 500. Now, the S&P 500 tracks the 500 largest companies in the United States. It's a great index fund. It's a great fund to own. All of my clients own the 500 largest companies in the United States. But the problem that I have is I see too many people, and that's the only fund that they have. That's the only investment that they have. And so when you're in those 500 largest U.S. companies, you're missing out on medium-sized companies, you're missing out on small-sized companies, you're missing out on international companies. And I've talked about this before, and I'll put the picture up on the screen. The last 10 years in the U.S., it has made a lot of sense for you. One second, let me get this pulled up. It's made a lot of sense for you to be exclusively in the 500 largest companies. Over the last 10 years, that return has been 11%, whereas medium size has gotten 7.35%, and small size companies have gotten 5.5%. Let me see. I don't have international pulled up, but you get my point. It's been a great idea over the last 10 years to be in large size companies as opposed to the other asset classes. However, from 2000 to 2010, if we look at the returns there, large size companies lost 1% a year, whereas medium size companies gained 6% per year, small size companies gained 4.36% per year, and international stocks gained 2.29% per year. So those are not great returns by any metric, but large size did worse than all other asset classes in that decade. And then the last decade, it's changed. Large size been better than the other asset classes, but it's going to change again at some point. So I really don't like seeing people that I meet with only invested in the S&P 500. And honestly, I see that in a lot of people's accounts. So definitely something to be looking out for. My third mistake, and I hesitate to call this a mistake, I mean, I'll get to why in a second, is concentrating all or most of your assets in tax-deferred accounts. So tax-deferred accounts are traditional IRAs, traditional 401ks. You put the money into the account, you get the tax deduction in the year that you put it in. So you put in $5,000, you get a deduction of $5,000 on your taxable income. It grows tax-free, and then when you take it out after 59 and a half, you avoid the penalties, and then you take it out and you have to pay income taxes on those distributions after 59 and a half. The reason why I don't love this is because if taxes rise in the future, and taxes always change every administration that we have, if taxes rise in the future, you're going to be stuck paying those income taxes regardless of what the tax rates are. And there's really nothing I or any other, great financial planner can do to help you avoid income taxes on distributions from the 401k. It's just a fact of life that we have to accept. Now, the problem that I have though is you don't have any tax diversification, and you don't have any money in taxable accounts, which if you do it right, you can pay the lower long-term capital gains rate of 0% or 15%, which would typically be lower than what you would take, what you would pay doing the tax-deferred distributions. The other option that I really like is Roth-style accounts. And the reason why I say this isn't necessarily retirees' mistake is because the Roth IRA was created in 1997. Let me double check that. Yep, it was created in 1997 and then became available January 1, 1998. And then the Roth 401k was only officially allowed to be offered on January 1, 2006. So I do not blame retirees, who were working in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s for not doing this. It just wasn't it wasn't even legal, let alone prominent as it is now. But this is something that if you're watching this video and you've got most or all of your money in tax-deferred accounts, I do think you need to be thinking about what can I do to get more tax flexibility and allow myself to be able to get income from my accounts in different ways in different tax-styled accounts. The number 4 mistake that I see retirees make, and this is actual retirees, is withdrawing insufficient funds. So I've talked in the past about the 4% rule where you can take out 4% of your investment account per year and then just adjust that for inflation every year. That is held up through the test through time. That's been something that's been studied. There's also been other studies done on a 5% distribution rate where you watch it a little more closely and you adjust your distributions based on how your portfolio's done. I think that's a pretty good strategy also, but I've seen retirees taking 0.5% out, 1% out, 2% out, and that's just not nearly enough. And if you really, really, really want the money to go to your kids or some kind of charity, I guess that's fine, but you've saved up and you've invested and you've earned that money. So I do think you need to feel free to use it. And I actually think that, 3 to 5%, I think that's a good gauge mark of, am I spending enough of my money so that I'm really enjoying it? And obviously, you want to do it so that there's going to be enough money lasting for the rest of your life. But if you're at 1.5% distribution rate and you've got your investments in a solid investment strategy, you're not going to run out of money at that point. So you need to, maybe up that distribution a little bit more and spend more on yourself and your family. The 5th big mistake that I see retirees make is they overemphasize news, and they spend way too much time on the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, CNBC, all of these news channels. They're paying attention to what Biden did in the past, what Trump's doing now. I think a couple months ago we had 3 consecutive days of 4% plus downturns, and all of that stuff just scares the heck out of people. Whereas if you just kind of not necessarily ignore it completely, but definitely don't look at it every day, and maybe not even look at it every month, every week, and then instead just look at it every month, your portfolio is going to be fine over the long term. So I see a lot of folks with too much time on their hands, spending way too much time reading and paying attention and asking, well, how does what Jerome Powell said about the interest rates, how does that affect us? Well, it doesn't really. You really don't need to worry about that kind of stuff. So I would definitely encourage some of you, and you know who you are. If you're listening to this video and you say, oh yeah, I'm guilty of that, that's you. And if you're saying to yourself, no, I don't ever check the Wall Street Journal, that's great. I mean, that's totally fine. But if you're overemphasizing the news, you got to tone that down a little bit. Make sure you're properly invested, and I think you're going to be okay as long as you've got all the other good elements of a financial plan. And then the sixth mistake that I see retirees make is they have too many investment accounts. I sometimes meet with folks who've got, 8 to 12 different investment accounts. They've got multiple IRAs. They've got a few Roth IRAs. They've got 3 old 401ks. They got a 457 in there. And it's just way too much to manage. Honestly, even for me, a financial professional who's doing this every single day. So I want it consolidated. I don't understand how, someone who's working full time or some, retiree who's enjoying their life and not spending all their time on their investments, it's going to make it so much harder to look at your asset allocation, the fees, your investment performance, required minimum distributions, any kind of Roth conversion strategy. It's just going to make everything so much harder if you have, double-digit numbers of accounts. So I would really encourage you guys all to consolidate where you can. You do have to know what you're doing on that because you don't want to accidentally move a traditional IRA into a Roth IRA because that's a taxable event and that's a whole another issue, and maybe it makes sense for you, but maybe it doesn't. So you got to know what you're doing there, and you do want to make sure that you keep the creditor protections that you do have on the 401ks and the IRA accounts. And I'm not going to get into all that right now. So you don't want to make sure you get rid of all of those benefits, but you can definitely consolidate and still keep the benefits if that makes sense. So those are the 6 big investment mistakes that I see retirees make. I do have to give a little pitch out for you guys. I've met with definitely over maybe 150, maybe I have met with over 200 people in my own firm since 2019. I'd have to double check the numbers on that. But most people that I meet, they don't have everything kind of squared away. They don't have everything done perfectly. If you are interested in just getting a checkup, seeing what suggestions I have for you, I'd love to meet with you. You can go to forthrightfinances.com, and then we can schedule a time to look through everything. It's a no sales, no arm twisting, no hard sales meeting, and we can just see what's going on with you. All right, hope this video was helpful, and I'll see you next time. Bye.